What's up, Wizards? It's Dev, and this is the news. I don't usually do stuff like this, but I figured so much happened this week, even more than usual, that I might want to talk about it. You might want to talk about it, so let's talk about it. Among the stuff that happened in just the past week, we had Wizards announcing that there's going to be 2 Universes Beyond sets every single year. Right on top of that news, we learned that Hasbro was massively down last year and actually predicts that Wizards of the Coast, despite being a leader for the company last year, is going to be down some percentage points in 2024. More on that in a second, but there's a lot more to talk about because there's also Fallout previews to take a quick look at. There's a big preview day coming up this Friday, February the 23rd. We'll talk a bit about that. And on top of all of that, we've also got to talk about the small Outlaws at Thunder Junction leak. So that is a lot to speak on today, and we will in just a second, but first I quickly got to do my little YouTube job here and let you know to like the video, put in more recommended feeds that way, subscribe to the video if you're new around here and you like my messy office or whatever it is, right? And you can also thank the patron of the day, a person simply enigmatically known as Prince. And that's it. Brand new patron, saw you in my inbox today. Just want to welcome you to the squad and thanks for the support, my friend. If you want to check out the patron, link in the description, plus a bunch of other stuff down there that you might be interested in. But let's go ahead and get started. There's a lot to sing about today. Pretty sure we got the band all tuned up, so let's start jamming. Now, this first thing that I want to cover is probably the simplest story of the day. There's really not that much information involved in this story, but there's enough online opinion involved in the story for just about anybody's taste. This is Wizards announcing there's going to be 2 Universes Beyond product every single year, out of 6 total products every year. So if you're doing the math, they were already releasing 6 total products, which means that they will be replacing one of these products with a Universes Beyond product. Now, it was going to be controversial enough if they just announced they were doing 2 UBs a year, but to simultaneously announce they're replacing a product they would otherwise release with a UB, to say people lost their minds is like saying there's old people in the Kroger. It's a bit of an understatement. Now, this grand design will begin in 2025 when we're going to get a Final Fantasy Universes Beyond and then a Marvel Universes Beyond. As a matter of fact, we're apparently going to be getting multiple Marvel Universes Beyond. Now, I'm not here in this video to pour sand on anyone's scrambled eggs. You know, I don't want to yuck the yum of anyone out there. I have already made it clear how I feel over on Twitter. Don't check my Twitter, but I do have to admit that this does bring in new players, and there's going to be plenty of people out there who are excited to see the Marvel UB and the Final Fantasy UB, myself included. I think a lot of us have made it clear, whether we admit it or not, that when it comes to Universes Beyond, we can just be total hypocrites and say that it's probably not a good idea for the health of the game, but if they give us the right Universes Beyond, we're like, yes, I will buy that. Such was the case with Lord of the Rings, and to be honest, even though I didn't buy a whole lot of that product, as soon as we get Final Fantasy, I'll probably pick up a few cards. I'm just being honest with you and myself. And I won't be into the Marvel thing so much, but a lot of people out there will, and it's going to expose Magic to a brand new audience, people who may otherwise have never been exposed to it. And I think that ultimately is a positive. However, I do have to acknowledge the other side of this argument because there are 2 wolves inside of me, and I sympathize with both positions because all those people who were saying wild stuff on Twitter a couple of years ago don't sound that wild now, you know? All these folks who were saying funny stuff like, man, Commander Pods a couple of years from now are going to be like Sonic the Hedgehog versus Luke Skywalker versus M. Bison versus Garfield or something, and like it's actually kind of coming true now. 2 Universes Beyond per year for God knows how long, and who knows what the Commander table is going to look like a couple of years down the road. On the other hand, gotta acknowledge one more argument here. There are some people in the world who think that's not such a bad thing. You know, there are Magic players out there, and a substantial number of them, it would appear, who want to play at the Sonic the Hedgehog, Luke Skywalker, Garfield table or whatever. They don't think it's a terrible thing. I know there's a lot of boomers like myself and probably some percentage of people watching this video who think it's the worst thing to ever happen, and it would be a little silly, I'll say that much, but again, these are properties that will bring in new players, and then we can introduce them to our worlds, you know, places like Innistrad and Ravnica and Lorwyn and places that we love, and maybe they'll fall in love with them too. We get Magic players, new Magic players out of the deal, and I think that's ultimately a good thing. But at what price, they ask? For what does it profit a man to gain the world but lose his soul? I'm not sure that this is exactly losing your soul if you're Wizards of the Coast, but boy does it sometimes feel that way as a dude that's been playing Magic for 30 years. I guess it's a situation where you have to be careful what you wish for. When I was younger, all I thought was, man, I wish everyone played Magic. I wish that I could share this experience with everyone and that it was a more common experience. That I could go up to someone in the grocery store, because I'm an old person too, and say, hey, you know Magic the Gathering? And they're like, yeah, I know that thing. Instead of telling people when they ask what I do that I'm a Magic the Gathering YouTube, and they're like, what do you do, tricks? I don't know what that is. So like there are times in my life, many times, where I've wished that this game was accessible and available and just more widely known by more people, because I want more people to play the game that I like. It's a good game. More people should play it, because then I'd have more people to play with and talk to it about, blah, blah, blah. But this is how we're going to get there. Whether all of us in this room like it or not, but I'll finish by saying that, again, I'm a big fat hypocrite on this. Lord of the Rings was an awesome product. A lot of us felt that way. And as soon as Final Fantasy comes out, I'll probably be picking up a Cloud and a Sephiroth and a Barret and a Tifa and a Cecil from Final Fantasy 2/4 and a Terra and a Cyan. There's a Mog, an Ultros. If they have an Ultros, they better make an Ultros card. It'd be awesome. But either way, see, listen to me. If it's the kind of thing that you're into, you might be into a Universes Beyond or two here or there. So again, I'm not completely adverse to the idea of UBs, but hearing that we're going to get 2 a year and one of them's going to replace a set we would otherwise get, this is not necessarily good news to me, but I'll acknowledge there's plenty of people out there to whom it is good news. Actually, before we move on, yes, I'm sorry this section's getting a little overly long, but I do think it's really important to say this bit. Few years go by, there's been 12 Universes Beyond that came out or whatever, and you're still playing Magic. You walk into a local game shop, your LGS, and there's a kid sitting there and they want to play Commander with you, and you realize that their deck is full of Universes Beyond stuff from different properties that aren't Magic. Don't be a jerk to them. Don't be a jerk to kids or new Magic players or even embedded Magic players that like this. Don't be a jerk. Let's, spread love and be kind. I say it at the end of every single video, and I mean, don't be a jerk to people just because they like a thing. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what, if you want to be a jerk, let's save our petty, vengeant laughs at other people's expenses for this next story, where Hasbro reported being down quite a large bit over the last quarter of 2023. This news, despite the fact that Wizards of the Coast and the digital gaming division were up a whole 10% on the fourth quarter of the year. Now, the digital gaming division is Arena, and they are making a lot of money on that, but it's also Baldur's Gate 3, which was the game of the year for a lot of people, as well as Monopoly Go, which is apparently an obscenely profitable mobile game. But again, despite that performance, apparently Hasbro declined 23% year over year in quarter four in terms of sales, and that is a lot. That's a big old decline, but maybe the biggest news, because, we don't really care about Hasbro that much. So maybe the biggest news is actually that as part of this story, Hasbro predicts there's going to be a 3 to 5% slump for Wizards of the Coast this year. And those are really the basics of this particular story. So here's where I cut in with a little good old-fashioned editorialization. Fancy word for opinion. But that's what everybody else has been doing, so I don't feel so bad. As a matter of fact, my editorialization here, it's kind of going to be about everyone else's editorialization. I'm not calling anyone in particular out, and that's because I see an awful lot of people covering this story in kind of a dishonest way, just celebrating the downfall of Wizards of the Coast when that's not actually what's happening here. I am sorry to tell some people, because it seems like a lot of people would really delight in that, but again, that's not really what's happening. That's because Hasbro made it pretty clear, and honestly, it's for fairly obvious reasons, why the revenue is expected to be down this year. It's because, last year was so freaking good, The Lord of the Rings set brought in more money than you could just possibly imagine. Imagine the biggest number you can think of. It probably brought in more money than that. So Lord of the Rings was extremely, extremely successful as a set, and they just won't really have anything planned like that for this year. Aside from that, there's also the money they got from Baldur's Gate 3, which again, Game of the Year contender, if not actual Game of the Year. That made a lot of money. And again, they just don't really have anything on the books like that this year. Plus, they expect to pay the majority of the licensing fees for Lord of the Rings at the end of this year. Another reason they expect to be down year over year, which again, just kind of makes sense. It's not the downfall of Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro. Maybe Hasbro if their toy division doesn't shape up, but they expect their toy division to shape up, and they expect Wizards of the Coast to be back to profitability, or at least the amount of growth they were receiving in 2025 as well. By the way, they expect Wizards of the Coast to be back to the numbers that shareholders expect, I guess is the best way to put that, in 2025, mostly due to Universes Beyond. So yeah, despite whatever clickbaity title you may have seen on the internet or here on YouTube, because there's plenty of them, not going to call out any uploaders, but God, There have been so many all caps clickbait titles about this particular story, and I just hate it. These headlines will be the death of not only the MTG community, but also humanity at large. The death of information is the death of humanity. But anyway, I'm getting way off subject here. How did I get started on that? Yeah, Magic's not dying. Wizards of the Coast admits that infinite growth isn't a thing. It's actually kind of nice. Corporations don't admit that enough, but they do admit or think that they will be right back up to the proper level that shareholders are used to. They didn't say that. It's probably how they feel within the next year or two. So Magic is not dying despite the 8 dozenth time in my life that I've heard that. Unless you count all the Universes Beyond stuff as Magic dying, which you might, but honestly, I have those thoughts sometimes too, and the more I think them, the more I think maybe I'm just bitter. Either way, self-reflection's an important thing. We should all practice it. Speaking of looking at stuff, we'll move into our next story here and check out a small selection of Fallout previews. They started this week, and we've actually gotten a pretty good number of them in just the first couple of days, including some pretty hype-looking reprints. But for the purposes of this video and the purposes of time management, I think I'm just going to look at 3 cards that piqued my interest from today. And those were Hancock, Ghoulish Mayor, Strong Back, and Nuclear Fallout. These all look like pretty strong cards to me, and Hancock is just a great character. I have played a little bit of Fallout. I know some of these words, and I know this dude, so really wanted to see what he did, and he didn't disappoint me once I actually got through the text box. Hancock is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 2/1 legendary zombie mutant advisor. Each other creature you control that's a zombie or mutant gets +X/+X, where X is the number of counters on Hancock. It also has Undying. That means when it dies, it comes back with a +1/+1 counter if it didn't have any +1/+1 counter. So it gets better after it dies, which is like really, really funny flavor. But obviously, while it's still on the table, even before it dies the first time, you can put a bunch of counters on it in the form of +1/+1 or ability counters or whatever you're doing. So this could actually be really, really sweet in just about any zombie deck. Now, at first glance, Strong Back just kind of looks like a crappy and overly wordy aura, but trust me, we'll get there. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an enchantment. It's an aura that enchants a creature. Equip abilities you activate that target the enchanted creature cost 3 less to activate. Aura spells you cast that target enchanted creature cost 3 less to cast. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it. The ability to just cast auras for cheaper on the Sting, that's fantastic, right? So not only is it a better Ancestral Mask, it's a way better Ancestral Mask, which is already a really good card. And then Nuclear Fallout, man. Wow, this is 2 black and X for a sorcery. Each creature gets twice -X/-X until end of turn. Each player gets X rad counters. So don't even really worry about the rad counter thing on this. What I'm mostly into is the fact that at 3 mana, this is an infest. It just is infest at 3 mana. 3 mana, -2/2 to everything. At 4 mana, it's a languish. It just is a languish. And then you can scale it beyond that. At 5 mana, it usually kills almost everything. And at 6 mana and 7 mana, it almost certainly will. It also has kind of insane art that goes very hard. The art really didn't have to go as hard as it does, but there we are. And the flavor text, too, is just everything about this card is really, really sweet to me. So, amazing black sweeper that scales incredibly well in a format like Commander and also looks pretty nice in Cube. Make sure to let me know what your favorite Fallout previews were down there, because there's a bunch more, and I'm about to do a whole video about them before too long. So don't worry, we'll talk more Fallout, but I also want to know kind of what ones you're looking forward to in that set. But either way, let's move on to our next story. Speaking of previews, our next story is news about news. It turns out that Friday of this week, Friday the 23rd of February 2024, there's going to be a big day of previews. Now, we're going to get our first look at Outlaws at Thunder Junction. We're still over a month away from true preview season on that one, but these first looks usually render somewhere between 15 and 20 cards to look at, so it's going to be a lot of cards, most of them from Thunder Junction. But that said, we're also going to be looking at stuff from Modern Horizons 3. So that's kind of cool. And we'll probably get a few cards from Bloomborough, at least one. They have promised us that we will see some Bloomborough. It's a set about tiny animals, and I'm very excited for it. We all should be, but we're going to see some Bloomborough, although probably not very much. Again, I expect most of this preview day to be about Outlaws at Thunder Junction. Will I be covering those? Absolutely. We do previews on this channel, and I swear to God we do other things, but a lot of people aren't aware of the other things we do. So yeah, yes, we will be doing that preview video. But speaking of Outlaws at Thunder Junction, we got a big old leak. Every single card in the set. That's not what happened. But again, looking at some headlines on the internet this week and here on YouTube proper, You would think the entire set got leaked. Just all caps headlines. Oh, a huge Thunder Junction leak. Actually, not that much got leaked. And if I had to guess, I would say this is a purposeful leak. Like there's like a 50% chance this is a purposeful leak. But even if it's not, it's a very respectful leak. It appears as though some vendors just released their product information ahead of time. So mostly what we got to see was product images. And who cares? We did get to glean some information from these product images, but for the most part, we just got to see like the draft booster box, the collector booster box, and really for the purposes of this story, the most information we were able to gather was from the commander deck boxes. Now, first of all, we know that there's going to be what they're calling a breaking news card in, I believe, every pack. It's going to be the bonus sheet for this set. Now, these are said to be reprints of awesome spells from throughout Magic's history, but honestly, I'm trying to bring you the most accurate information that I can, but I have heard reports that these will be cards from the set. I've heard reports that these breaking news cards will be reprints, but I guess there could be some overlap between those two categories, right? But I have also heard, we have all also heard, that in about 20% of packs, you will get a special card from throughout Magic's history. I don't know if they're referring to the list specifically or a different bonus sheet for this set or what. If they are referring to the list, and honestly I believe they might be here, then 20% is like a full 7.5% higher than usual the last time I checked. So that's a pretty good occurrence rate for list cards. Or special guests, which this might also be too. Just whatever it is, 20% is again a pretty high rate of occurrence for something like that. But honestly, what I care about most is the mechanics of a set. What's in it, how's it played, blah, blah, blah. And the commander decks may have helped spoil just a little bit of what's going on in the mechanics of the set. Now, we know about 4 of these. There's an Is It Spell Slinger deck that looks to cast multiple spells in a turn, so the cast 2 spells a turn thing might be a sort of sub-mechanic in this set. But we also have, interestingly, I think one of the more interesting looking commander decks in terms of what new information we got for Outlaws is the Naya deck that looks to discard lands and then apparently reanimate them or get some other value. Interestingly, the Naya deck also mentions something about like cactus people or something like that, so I guess we're not going to have to wait until Final Fantasy to get a Cactar. We also saw a Sultai like spell stealing commander deck headed up by Gonti of all people. Gonti's back, that's pretty cool, but the idea again appears to be to steal your opponent's cards and spells and cast them and stuff like that, so that's kind of interesting. And finally, Olivia comes back, a Mardu Olivia commander deck for this set, so I'll probably be picking that one up. Especially considering apparently it's mostly centered around making treasures and stuff. So treasures in this set too. Again, we were able to glean a little bit about the mechanics here in this set from these commander decks. But again, they're commander decks, so these might be mechanics that aren't super inherent to the set. There might not be that many, cast 2 spells and do a thing triggers. There might not be that many treasures in the set because again, these are commander decks. But by and large, you see commander decks like to, be in line with what the set is doing mechanically. So if we get a lot more treasure stuff in Outlaws, which first of all would just kind of make sense thematically and flavorfully, I'll be very, very happy with that. And honestly, that Naya land discard deck looks pretty promising too, just in terms of like what it's trying to do. It's a cool theme. So I don't know. I'm kind of jacked a little bit about some of the Outlaws product that we've got to see so far, but Outlaws could be a very silly set when it comes right down to it, but sometimes I kind of like goofy magic. There's nothing wrong with goofy magic. If you're an old school player like me and you think goofy magic is terrible, I'd like to point you to Rabid Wombat, which has existed since at least 1994. That is far goofier than anything we've seen the last few years. And besides, apparently a Wild West theme has been one of the most requested themes for like 10 years or more now, so a lot of people want this set. I'm not the biggest fan of cowboys and stuff like that. I don't care about like westerns and stuff, but I still think there's a lot of design space in this set and I'm kind of excited. So again, stay tuned for the previews on Friday. There's probably going to be a lot to talk about when that rolls around. End of the day, I just like cool cards, and whether they come in a Universes Beyond or a cowboy set or whatever, you give me cool cards, I'll be happy with that. I don't care if Hasbro's in a bigger slump than Rob Schneider. Sorry, Rob Schneider, I guess. No one should apologize to Rob Schneider for anything. I still, all I really care about at the end of the day is the magic, the cards, how cool they are, if I'm excited to play them, once I actually play them, are they fun, all that stuff. Really, you give me all the news in the world, and all I want to know at the end of the day is, are the cards cool? Well, that's really all we got for this one. I think we finally wrapped it up. There was a lot to talk about. If you would like a monthly news show like this, where we just like round up all the topics and kind of juggle them and talk about them for a minute, then let me know that. I would be more than happy to do something like this every now and again, because honestly, it was a little more cathartic than I thought it would be. But yeah, I guess that's it for this week's or this month's or this year's news. For now, just let me know how you felt about everything down there in the comment section. I'm sure that you will. You have rich and varied opinions, and I like reading them. But again, as always, let's try to keep it nice down there. I know there's a lot to yell about, and honestly, if you can commiserate with one another while yelling, raise your voice so long as you're not hurting anybody, you know what I mean? But at the same time, let's try and keep it as civil as possible between people who disagree. But yeah, it's basically Allski Kowalski. Just do all the stuff. I'll remind you one more time to like the video and put it in more recommended feeds, even if you're not the kind of person that usually likes YouTube videos. Maybe just this one time you hit that thumbs up. Doesn't take too much effort on your part. I would really appreciate it too. You'd be making me happy with very minimal effort. So I guess if you want to do that today and you haven't done your good deed for the day, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for the notifications. I never tell you to do that, but do all the YouTube stuff. And of course, thank Prince, the patron of the day. Thanks for coming on board, Prince. Wow, a prince, you guys. That is ritzy. But either way, we've really made it at this point. But either way, if you're interested in being the patron of the day or just supporting the channel, then I'll leave a link in the description to Patreon down there. Aside from that, I'll be streaming Thursday Night Ski on the twitch.tv/SBMTGDev, and I'll leave a link down there in the description so you can follow if you're into that too. So we'll be playing some janky thing or another in MKM Standard, but I think I'm basically done, and that's all the self-promotion I really feel like doing for this one. So I guess I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.